Good morning. It is time for our morning devotional. Not. So let's just discuss today's topic: stroke under 50. I've had a couple of new subscribers over the last day. Thank you for joining this merry little band. One of them messaged me on YouTube to say that he's grateful for finding the channel, and that's because his sister had a stroke. I had my stroke on the 21st of June. Now, yes, I had some speech difficulties when I got out of the hospital. That lasted about 7 to 10 days. They disappeared, in quotes, about that time. However, I still will have speech difficulties at times. Overstressed, overtired, overstimulated, overwhelmed, emotional. The stuttering will come back, along with word selection and recall issues. So I may have to learn to deal with that for a long time. So what we're going to discuss today is stroke under 50. It's it's a bit hobbling, right? There are many reasons for this, and we'll go through some of them. This is, because I'm under 50. B, I've had a stroke. And one of my subscribers has related to me that his sister is expecting to be off work for a year. Well, you know what? The doctors have told me I have to be off for 6 months. And I realize what I'm about to say is going to get the dander up in some people. I'm not prepared to wait that long. I'm ready. Well, I am of the belief that I feel ready to go back to work now. Is that a reality? I don't know. Right? Position came up at work that I would be, in my opinion, well, of course, I'm going to be prejudiced in favor of me. In my opinion, I would be the best option for. So I applied for it. I don't know if it's realistic if I go back to work, but this whole 6 months off thing, yeah. So I understand completely where your sister is at, right? If they've written her off for a year, right? Now, let's just go through, and my main source of argument is a NCBI NIH government article about stroke recovery in young adults. So, this study follows a series of patients that are 55 or under, right? And some of the problems they had after their stroke, right? So the first thing you're going to have after your stroke is an altered sense of self. And again, we're going to break down medical speak into human. What exactly does altered self of self mean? There's altered sense of self. Sorry, I had a stroke. Altered sense of self mean you don't look at yourself the same way, right? You feel like your life has been disrupted. Yep, there, completely there. If I can learn how to make a check mark, I like ding, check mark. Now that could be anything in your daily living between eating, moving, bathing, problems speaking, remembering, picking up change off your table, right? Because my stroke was a left brain stroke, which means physically my right side is impacted. Luckily, I'm right-hand dominant, right? So I would force myself to do things with my right hand, like I would put change on my kitchen table, or I would drop change on the floor, accidentally or not, and then pick it up. If I was to drop something on the floor and someone was around, I would ask them, please, don't get that for me, let me do it. And then my evil physiotherapist would throw beanbags on the floor. Luckily, she's yet to learn how to do color drills. No, that is not, no. If my physiotherapist is watching this, no color drills. This may improve over time. Let me put the glasses down. Let me clean them. My grandmother would ask me, "How do you see through those?" And I would always sarcastically reply, "With my eyes." And she would roll them and usually leave the room. So, this may improve over time, right? It may not. All depends on your perception of self to begin with, right? So, if you perceive yourself as in a certain role or having certain abilities or characteristics, how impacting is your stroke on the actual functionality of those abilities, characteristics, right? The more impacted you are, the more impacted those things are, the more impacted your perception of self will be, right? So now, with the altered sense of self becomes the loss of identity. Um, loss of identity, because A, you're young. You're not some octogenarian, blue hair, wheelchair-ridden grandparent, you know. You may not be like myself. I'm not diabetic. I'm not morbidly obese. I'm 6'3", 235, actually 237 the last time they weighed me in the hospital. I smoked, but not heavily, right? My resting heart rate in the hospital was 64 beats per minute, which is pretty decent. Now then. So, because, also not an intravenous or major illicit narcotic or drugs users, right? So there's many reasons why I did not have my stroke. Oh, also not on birth control. I've never been on birth control, and I still had a stroke, right? So, so at that point, you're going to have some of the loss of identity. Now, I did a video on the why me, right? You might want to go back and check that video out in regards to the loss of identity, because you will develop a sense of why me, right? And I remember this, and this is reading directly from the literature. Following the shock of diagnosis, many individuals describe feeling a sudden loss of their former selves. Yes. Ding! Gotta learn how to do that. So, scariest sentence I've ever heard in my entire life. You're having a stroke. I'd been off the ambulance 2 minutes. No more than 5. I met Dr. McKenzie, the man who saved my life at RVH in Barrie. And, yeah. At that point, my world crumbled. Having worked as my last job in mental health with acquired brain injury clients and having witnessed what my grandmother went through after her stroke, yeah, my world crumbled almost immediately. Many people feel like they've been given a childlike brain back again. The literature mentions simple daily tasks like taking a city bus can becoming an unnerving process. Yes, completely. Especially if you have speech and language issues, communication deficits. I've lived in Aurelia, the city I live in, for about a little under 3 years before I had my stroke. I've developed even just relationships in passing with people. When I went to get on the city bus, and I knew some of the people on the bus, they had no idea I had a stroke. And I was stuttering. Problem is, when you don't drive, or you're not allowed to drive, how do you get around? When you're single, you live alone, how do you get around? I needed milk. I needed fill in the blank, right? I needed to get the hell out of the house, right? So just getting on the bus can be daunting. And things that you used to be able to do, part of that, again, a loss of identity we've covered before. You can remember what you could do and what you can do versus what you're able to do, right? You might have been able to multitask. You might have been able to do, you know, whatever the case may be, right? It could be you might have been able to sit down and read an entire book on a lazy Saturday afternoon, and now you can't get more than 12 pages in before the book needs to be thrown across the room. Might have been a case where, you know, you were able to do easily 30 push-ups. Now, with me, if I try to do a push-up, the activity, the up and down, the brain hates it, and I want to puke. It's actually physically painful at times. So, now, to go along with the altered sense of self and the loss of your self-identity, that now rolls into family disruption and role change, right? Your role as the stroke assaulter, again, my preferred adjective noun combination is stroke assaulter. I'm not a victim. I'm not a sufferer. I'm not a survivor. I'm assaulting this, right? That's why it's stroke assaulter, right? You're going to have a change in roles, right? Because you are not the same person you were before your stroke right now. And that could be because you have a poor memory. That could be because you have speech and language deficits or difficulties. That could be because you have mobility issues. That could be because you're not at home. Right now, you may be in a recovery facility, right? And how is that going to impact your sense of self, right? Your sense of self-identity, and you essentially don't have a role in your family unit right now because you're in a hospital. You're not with your family. Your family comes to you for 5 to 6 hours at a time. So, and this also may disrupt the relationships you have. If you're married, you may decide that this will limit the number of children you currently have or are about to have. If you are married, this may change, you know, the roles in the household for a while, where you now have to basically allow people to be there and you don't do a lot, right? So there's various ways that the family disruption and role change can occur. You know, things that used to be simple may no longer be as simple, right? And at that point, your spouse, right, may have to take a leave of absence from their job to help care for you after your stroke. So that may create some other issues as well, right? Let's just be realistic here. A stroke is impacting to everyone, right? The person that had the stroke, they get the full-time fun, entertainment, and enjoyment of living the stroke. The people, the friends, the family members that are around that person that had the stroke, they get it in small doses. Luckily, they get to leave. You know, because I wouldn't want that. I wouldn't wish this on anyone. Actually, maybe, yeah, there might be a couple people you really hate, like you get a stroke. You know, maybe even that'd be kind of cool. You know, so now you have the altered sense of self, the loss of self-identity. You know, your world's been turned upside down on a domestic and relationship front. Because as the person who's had the stroke, you're going to be asking yourself constantly, is this fair to that other person, right? How can hanging around with the guy that's had the stroke be even A, remotely enjoyable, B, you know, suiting anyone's needs, and then C, fair, right? It's not fair that you'd have to tolerate, put up with, fill in the blank, that person, because, you know, I can remember sitting in a restaurant having a conversation for 10 minutes what I wanted to eat for lunch. When the server came around, complete blank. I didn't know. I looked at my parents and went, I have no idea. And it's not me being a dick. I don't know. right? Now, also, with role reversal, you're an adult, right? Um, you might now have people needing to treat you like a child, right? Be that feeding, toileting, bathing, uh, dressing, right? So, and and luckily I'm not there. Um, and I can only imagine how emotionally and intellectually decapitating that would seem. Forgive the pun about decapitation. I can't even imagine, right? Um, and at that point, like that would completely shatter my world. I don't know how you might deal with that. Right now, let's get into the loss of valued activities, work, relationships, or sorry, work, recreation, and socialization. Well, you've had your stroke. Odds are they're not letting you go to work. I'm there, right? And because you're not at work, there's a large social aspect to work. Um, yeah, I don't get that on a day in, day out basis. I would go to work due to the job I had. I would work with many people throughout a day, be it managers, uh, working, helping them, assisting either their team or individual employees. I'd be working with individual employees as a trainer, and then the training prime, and then also with assisting customers. Right. So I don't have that social aspect right now. Recreation. I play airsoft as a hobby. You've probably already seen that video, New Normal Meet Old Normal. I've been out twice since my stroke. Um, I find it still a bit physically taxing. My body still doesn't like it, but there's not much I can do about that. I just have to fight through it and get to the point where I am. So now, when you also get into employment, you kind of need money, right? So at that point, a lot of people, and myself included, right? I go to work because I get a sense of enjoyment out of my job, and I'll be honest, there's a bit of accomplishment there. Right now, I don't feel very recognized or very accomplished. Now, luckily, I'm in Canada, so my actual financial cost due to my stroke, I did a video about that. For the actual stroke itself, for the first year, the actual out of pocket, I'm going to be about $200, if that, right? Now, in addition to that, you may have your driver's license taken away. Right? You may have other licenses suspended or revoked, depending on what you do for a living, or if you happen to be a pilot, they might revoke your pilot's license. If you happen to be a boater, they might revoke your boating license. Depending on other licenses you may have or hold, they may be suspended or revoked depending on the severity of your stroke. Right? And that I can't speak to that because that's not anything I have experience with. Right? And then the next thing is social, right? Well, just getting out of bed can be fatiguing, right? For me, some days trying to be social takes effort, right? Just to get out of bed, just to get up and showered, just to get dressed, right? Go juice, gotta love it, right? So, and not only that, sometimes you might want to distance yourself from social activities. Could be because that you don't have the ability to carry on long conversations like you used to. Maybe you happen to still have speech and language impediment difficulties that need to be overcome, and you're embarrassed about your speech and language skills, right? Could be you don't remember people. It's like people that you know, like I know you, you can't remember names. For whatever reason, you don't remember names, right? And so, or you don't want to be seen as the stroke guy, right? That's kind of where I'm at right now myself. I'll be honest about that. Now, once you get into the, role change, your loss of self-identity, you're trying to deal with your new sense of self, you now have the adapted sense of self, right? Now, a stroke is a catastrophe, right? In the high order. It's a high order catastrophe, right? And because it's a catastrophe, there are many alterations in your life and the lives of our people around you. So, and these come down to how do you adapt, right? Now, I'm always the improvise, adapt, overcome type guy. If there's an obstacle, I'm getting through it. I'm getting over it. I'm getting under it. I will almost never pick, go around. I'm not a bypass obstacle kind of guy. I'm like, find it and fix it and fuck it, right? That's exactly what's going to happen. Now then, you're going to have to seek external support. Go find people to help you. However, it's difficult to ask all the time for help, right? You don't want to come off as weak or incapable or unable, right? Because that's kind of where I'm at as well. I don't want to come off as being, I'm not able to do that, or I'm incapable of doing that, or you're going to think I'm weak, right? Now, the document says, despite changes in social relationships and family roles noted in the themes above, right? Because you're essentially going to be isolated, and you are, you're going to have to seek support from other people, right? People are going to you're going to have to learn to lead. Yeah, it's not so easy. I'm just going to leave it at that. Now, part of that, and we'll get into this later, is seeking external support. When it comes time to go back to work, you are going to need help with that, right? That is not a thing you're going to be doing on your own, right? When it comes time in my journey to get closer to a return to work discussion, or unless you guys want to see me do like a return to work strategies video, I'll do that. Sure, why not? As in my job at my place of employment, I would actually help write the return to work plan, and I would help agents or employees facilitate that return to work plan, right? Now, restoring normality, okay? And this comes right from the document. A few individuals articulated their post-stroke experience as akin to being a new person, right? Removing aspects of their old self became a form of coping. So you may have a drastic change in interests. You may have a drastic change in personality. You may have a drastic change in physical dress, deportment, and presentation, right? If you used to play the piano and now you have mobility issues in your hands and fingers, where playing the piano is basically next to impossible or just ridiculously painful. You may just decide to tune out all music out of your life. You may decide to cut your hair, right? You may decide to do something to remove a portion of your old life out of your new life, mainly because it might be painful, right? You don't want to remember things that you can't do. Now, many of the individuals who initially sought to create a new self tried to restore their sense of self by engaging in activities that were important to them before the stroke. And by doing so, you're going to try to incorporate as much as possible your old self into your new self and try to use the old self as leverage into getting the new self back to where the old self was, without using the words new and old self again. Basically, can you take what you used to do before your stroke to help you find who you were after the stroke, right? Now, and also during the recovery, people want to reestablish their rules. You don't want to be perceived as a burden, right? I'm kind of there right now, right? You know, for me, I want to get back to work, right? And I want to get to work badly. In fact, I'm ridiculously considering going against medical direction and saying fuck it and just find a doctor that'll write me back to work, right? Because I don't feel useful, you know, and that's because I sit at home all day long doing a whole lot of nothing. So I'm considering it. I don't know how practical that'll be. I'll discuss that with my therapist next week. And then the last one is positive self-reflection. Now, I'm going to say right off the hop, I'm not an exemplar of positive self-reflection because right now I'm not really having any of it. Because right now I'm kind of grieving my old self. I'm grieving the fact that I'm at home, had a stroke, and not really dealing with it well at times. So just read something. And this is from one of the respondents in the study. That'll be the first document in the links, right? Person here says, you're going to feel all different ways. You're going to feel resentful. Why me? You're going to feel down in the dumps. You're going to feel angry. You're going to feel sad. You're going to feel frustrated. You're going to feel absolutely everything under the sun. It's just part of the process of accepting it, getting better, getting stronger. Well, yeah, okay, those are words to me. I need to get back to work. I need to prove that I'm able, capable, competent, and I can compete. I can creatively and constructively contribute to the team, right? This whole being at home thing, yeah, I'm done with it, to be quite honest. Now, some people, they're going to be like happy to have a second chance, so they might be a bit happy to have a second chance, right? Now then, I'm not there yet. Well, some days I am, some days I'm not, I'll be honest. So, basically, it's going to take some time with that positive self-reflection, right? Because in the first couple of months, it's a whirlwind of emotion, activity, changes in state of care, work, floor, ambulance, emergency, brain draino, ICU, stroke unit, cardiac renal monitoring, home. Panic attack, home. Rehab, home. Rehab, right? I'm perplexed, and don't get me wrong, I'm glad people are actually getting something out of the channel. It's just, I've gotten to the point where I need to do something, right? And it's not that I don't enjoy making these videos, because I do. It's just a matter of, I need to find something to do that is like my old self. Because this is a new self thing, not an old self thing. What that'll be yet, I don't know. But I gotta find something. But anyways, so because of a new subscriber whose sister who had a stroke under 50, I just thought I would do a, turns out a 30-minute video on stroke under 50. Now, if you happen to see what you've if you happen to like or see what you've seen over the last 2 months, please like, share, subscribe with your friends. If you know someone in your family or friends, circle of friends that's had a stroke, please recommend the channel to them. And if you happen to see either in yourself or someone around you the signs or symptoms of a stroke, that being facial droop, inability to raise both arms equally effectively or at all, inability to smile equally effectively or at all, slurred, stuttering speech, inappropriate word usage for situation or context, inability to stand unaided, general body weakness or weakness on one side, please immediately place that person in a position of comfort and dial 911. Something so simple could save a life.